You know what I keep seeing in my inbox lately? People sending me the same message over and over again. Different names, different states, different situations, but the same question at the end. John, how much do I actually need? Not the number they put on the news. Not the number some 35-year-old financial blogger throws around. The real number, for real people, in the real world. And honestly, I think it's the most important retirement question most of us never get a straight answer to. So today, we're going to fix that. Stay with me. All right, let's start with the number you've probably already heard. According to Northwestern Mutual's 2026 Planning and Progress Study, this is one of the most comprehensive retirement surveys in the country. The average American now believes they need $1.46 million to retire comfortably. Let that sink in for a second. $1.46 million. That's up 15% from just last year, when people said $1.26 million. And it's nearly double what most people have actually saved. Now, I want to be real with you from the top of this video. When I first saw that number, my reaction was, and forgive me, who came up with this? Because for a lot of us watching right now, that number doesn't match our reality. It might feel discouraging. It might feel like the goalposts keep moving. And honestly, that's because they do. But here's what I want you to hold on to for the next 15 minutes or so. That $1.46 million is an average. It is not your number. And by the end of this video, you're going to have a much better sense of what your number actually looks like, based on your life, your location, and your plans. Fair enough? Let's get into it. Before we talk about what you need, I want to spend just a minute on where most Americans actually are right now, because I think it helps to know you're not alone. According to data from Empower, one of the largest retirement platforms in the country, people in their 60s have an average retirement savings balance of about $1.18 million. Sounds pretty good, right? But here's the thing about averages. They get pulled way up by people with very large balances at the top. The median, which is the number right in the middle of the pack, is closer to $536,000. So if you've got somewhere around $500,000 saved at 60 or 65, you're actually right in the middle of where most Americans are. You're not behind. You're not unusual. You're exactly where the data says a lot of people land. Now, there's another number that really got my attention from BlackRock, one of the biggest investment firms in the world. They surveyed 1,000 registered voters and found that 62% of Americans have less than $150,000 saved for retirement. $150,000. And yet they said they'd need over $2 million to feel comfortable. That's not a small gap. That is a chasm. I'm not sharing this to scare you. I'm sharing it because if we're going to have an honest conversation, a real conversation, we have to start with where things actually stand. And where things stand is most Americans are working with less than the textbooks say they need, which means the question isn't just, how do I hit some magic number? It's, how do I make what I have work as well as possible? That's what we're here for. Okay, here's the part of the video I really want you to pay attention to, because this is where we move from talking about averages to talking about you. There are 5 factors, 5 real practical factors that determine what your retirement number should actually be. Let's go through them one by one. Factor number 1, your lifestyle. This is the big one, and it's also the one most people skip over because it feels obvious. What do you actually want your retirement to look like? A common rule of thumb in financial planning is that you'll need about 70 to 80% of your pre-retirement income to maintain a similar lifestyle once you stop working. The logic is that some expenses drop. You're not commuting anymore, you might be in a lower tax bracket, you might not be saving 15% of your paycheck every month. But other costs go up. Travel, hobbies, maybe helping out kids or grandkids. Now, some of you watching this want a very quiet retirement, staying close to home, garden, grandkids, church on Sunday. That's beautiful. and your number is probably on the lower end of that range. Others of you have spent 40 years working and you want to travel. Europe, national parks, a cruise or two a year. That lifestyle costs more, and your number reflects that. Neither is wrong, but they are very different numbers. So start there. What does your day actually look like in retirement? Factor number 2, where you live. This one surprises people a lot. If you're in California, Hawaii, or Massachusetts, 3 of the most expensive states in the country, studies show retirees often need between $1.5 million and $2.2 million just to maintain a standard lifestyle. But if you're in Oklahoma, the baseline for a comfortable retirement is closer to $735,000. Mississippi and Arkansas aren't far behind. That's nearly $1 million difference, based purely on your zip code. Now, a lot of folks in their 60s are looking at this and thinking about what used to be called retiring somewhere cheaper. Maybe a lower-cost state, maybe a smaller town, maybe even abroad, though that's a whole other video. The point is, location is one of the most powerful levers you can pull, and it doesn't get nearly enough attention in these conversations. Factor number 3, how long you're going to live. I know that sounds a little morbid, but hear me out. At 60, if you're in reasonably good health, you could easily have 25, 30, even 35 years ahead of you. That's not a short trip. That's a whole second act. And here's why that matters financially. Financial planners often talk about something called the 4% rule. The idea is that if you withdraw 4% of your savings in the first year of retirement and adjust for inflation each year after that, your money should last roughly 30 years. There's also what's called the 25x rule, which basically says you need 25 times your annual spending saved up before you retire. So if you plan to spend $60,000 a year, you'd want about $1.5 million. If you plan to spend $80,000 a year, you're looking at $2 million. These are rough guidelines, not gospel, but they give you a framework. And here's the uncomfortable truth. A lot of retirement plans were built for people who maybe lived into their mid-70s. If you're looking at living to 85, 90, or beyond, and plenty of people are, your money needs to stretch a lot further. That changes things. Factor number 4, Social Security. Let's talk about the big one that everybody worries about. Here's where things stand right now. The average Social Security retirement benefit in 2026 is about $2,071 per month, following a 2.8% cost of living adjustment this year. That's around $24,000 a year. Not nothing, but not enough to live on by itself for most people. Here's the strategic piece I want you to really hear. Every year you delay claiming Social Security past your full retirement age, up to age 70, your monthly benefit increases by 8%. 8%. Guaranteed. That is an extraordinarily hard return to find anywhere else in the market right now. Now, I know not everyone can delay. Some of you need that check at 62 or 65, and that's a completely legitimate choice. Health matters. Your cash flow matters. Your spouse's situation matters. But if you have flexibility, if you have savings that can carry you for a few years, delaying Social Security might be one of the most powerful financial moves you can make in your early 60s. We'll do a whole dedicated video on Social Security timing, so stay subscribed for that. Factor number 5, healthcare. I saved this one for last because it's the one people tend to underestimate the most, and it can be the one that really breaks a retirement plan if you're not ready for it. In a recent survey, 63% of retirees said healthcare costs are their number one financial worry in retirement. Not running out of money in general, specifically the cost of staying healthy. And that's not paranoia. Medicare kicks in at 65, which helps. But Medicare doesn't cover everything. There's supplemental coverage, Medigap policies. There's dental and vision, which Medicare largely does not cover. There's the possibility of long-term care, assisted living, in-home care, which can run thousands of dollars a month. If you're doing your retirement math and you're not building in a healthcare cushion, I'd encourage you to revisit those numbers. Talk to a financial planner about long-term care insurance. It's not the most exciting topic, but it might be one of the most important. So there are your 5 factors: lifestyle, location, longevity, Social Security, and health care. Your number lives at the intersection of all 5, not in a survey, not on a news headline. It's personal, and it's worth sitting down and actually working through, ideally with someone who knows what they're doing. I want to take a few minutes to talk about something that doesn't always come up in retirement videos, because I think it matters. Fear. Not in a dramatic way, but in the quiet 2 in the morning, am I going to be okay kind of way. Because if you're over 60 and you're thinking seriously about retirement, these fears are real. And I don't think it does anyone any good to just brush past them. So let's name them. Fear number 1, running out of money before you die. According to a 2025 Alliance study, 64% of Americans are more afraid of running out of money than they are of death itself. Let that one sit for a second. More afraid of outliving their savings than dying. If you feel that way, you are not alone. You are not being irrational. This is one of the most common fears I hear about. And it makes sense, because we don't know how long we're going to live. We don't know what inflation is going to do. And we don't always know what our health is going to look like in 20 years. What I'll say to that is this: the antidote to that fear isn't a specific number. It's a plan. A real, flexible, updated plan. Not one you made 10 years ago and never looked at again. The more clarity you have about your income sources, your withdrawal strategy, and your expenses, the less that fear has to run your life. Fear number 2, Social Security won't be there. About 43% of Americans believe Social Security will fall short for them. Here's what I want to say about this, and I want to be honest rather than just reassuring. Social Security does face real funding challenges. The trust fund is projected to face pressure around the mid-2030s. But, and this is important, facing funding challenges is not the same as going away. Social Security is politically one of the most protected programs in the country. What's more likely than disappearance is some form of adjustment. Benefit modifications, changes to the retirement age, tax adjustments. Not pleasant, but manageable. My advice: don't build a retirement plan that depends on Social Security being exactly what it is today. Build a plan where Social Security is a supplement, a valuable one, but not your only lifeline. Fear number 3, inflation is going to eat everything. This one is really fresh for a lot of people. We lived through a period of serious inflation. And even as it's cooled down, the prices we felt in groceries, in healthcare, and housing, those didn't come back down. And that stings. It's actually one of the main reasons that magic number for retirement has been climbing. People felt what inflation does, and they don't want to be caught unprepared. The honest answer here: you can't eliminate inflation risk, but you can hedge against it with Social Security's cost of living adjustments, with investments that have historically kept pace with or beaten inflation, and with a spending plan that has some flexibility built in. Inflation is a real risk. It's also a manageable one if you're planning for it rather than ignoring it. Okay, we've looked at the reality. We've faced the fears. Now let's talk about what you can actually do, especially if you're in your 60s right now and you're thinking about all of this. And I want to be really clear. It is not too late. For most of us watching, there are still meaningful moves on the table. Move number 1, take full advantage of the Secure 2.0 Act catch-up contributions. This is one of the most significant retirement savings changes in years, and I don't think enough people are talking about it. If you are between ages 60 and 63, the IRS now allows what's called a super catch-up contribution to your 401k. In 2026, that means you can contribute up to $35,750 total into your 401k in a single year. For comparison, the standard limit for people under 50 is $24,500. So if you're in that 60 to 63 window, you have a real opportunity to accelerate your savings in a way that simply wasn't available before. If you're not sure how this applies to your specific plan, call your HR department or talk to your plan administrator. This is worth looking into. Move number 2. Delay Social Security if you possibly can. I mentioned this earlier, but I want to say it again because I think it's that important. Every year you delay past your full retirement age, which for most people watching is somewhere between 66 and 67. Your monthly benefit goes up by 8%. If you wait until 70, you can receive significantly more each month for the rest of your life. For someone with a $2,000 a month benefit at full retirement age, waiting until 70 could mean $2,640 a month instead. That's an extra $7,680 a year. For 20 or 25 years of retirement, that adds up to a staggering difference. Again, not everyone can wait. But if you have a plan that lets you hold off, it's worth running the numbers. Move number 3. Do the Fidelity check-in. Fidelity has a simple, widely used benchmark that I think is worth knowing. They suggest that by age 60, you should have roughly 8 times your annual salary saved for retirement. So if your household earns $70,000 a year, the benchmark is $560,000 saved by 60. If you earn $90,000, that's $720,000. Now, before you panic or celebrate based on that number, remember that it's a benchmark, not a verdict. It doesn't account for Social Security, pensions, a working spouse, or the fact that you plan to move somewhere with a much lower cost of living. It's a checkpoint, not the finish line, but it is a useful gut check. Do that math today. Know where you stand. Move number 4. Think seriously about where you're going to live. This is maybe the least talked about retirement move that has the biggest financial impact. If you're currently in a high cost of living area, a major city, a coastal state, and you don't have a specific reason to stay there, this is worth a real conversation. Moving from California to Tennessee, for example, doesn't just lower your cost of living. It can meaningfully reduce your state income taxes. It can lower your housing costs, maybe even let you buy something outright with equity from your current home. It changes your entire retirement math. I know moving is emotional. It's hard to leave communities and families. But if financial security is a real concern, it's a conversation worth having. Move number 5. Talk to a real financial planner. I say this as someone who makes retirement content, not financial advice. The moves I've described today are general principles. They apply to a lot of people. But your situation has specific details that a general YouTube video cannot account for. If you don't already work with a fee-only financial advisor, someone who doesn't earn commissions on what they sell you, I'd encourage you to look into it. Even 1 or 2 sessions with a good planner can give you a personalized picture of where you are and what you need to do next. You wouldn't skip the doctor to just read articles online about your health. Your financial health deserves the same care. All right, let me bring it back to where we started. You wanted to know how much you actually need to retire comfortably. And the honest answer is, it depends. It depends on how you want to live, where you plan to be, how long you're expecting to stick around, how you use Social Security, and how you handle healthcare costs. The $1.46 million number that's all over the news right now? That's what the average American believes they need. It's a useful data point, but it is not your number. It might be higher. It might be lower. It's almost certainly different. What matters more than hitting some headline figure is having a real plan, one that accounts for your actual life, not a hypothetical average. If you're 60, 62, 65, wherever you are right now, you still have time to make meaningful moves. The super catch-up contributions, the Social Security strategy, the location decision, the healthcare planning. These aren't small things. These can change the trajectory of the next 20 or 30 years. And if you're sitting here thinking, I'm already behind, I want to say this directly to you. Being behind is only a problem if you stop moving. Most people I've talked to who feel behind in their 60s actually have more options than they realize. They just haven't had someone sit down and walk through it with them honestly. That's what we try to do here at The Real Years, so drop your question in the comments. I read every single one. And if this video helped you at all, share it with someone who might need it. Because this is a conversation a lot of people need to be having. I'm John Mitchell. Thanks for being here. I'll see you in the next one.